The DNA sequencing didn't come back with a result. It came back with an error code the lab had never logged before. Contamination, they said. Bad sample, run it again. They ran it again. Same code. A third time. Same impossibility. That's when the geneticist stopped talking, like this was a routine problem. He lowered his voice, turned the report toward her, and said the sentence doctors almost never say out loud. We can't explain this. The woman sitting across from him is 34. She looks normal until you start reading the numbers. Her bone density is nearly 3 times the expected human range. Her red blood cells carry a protein pattern that doesn't match any reference panel the lab has access to. The marker cluster sits in places it shouldn't sit, like a signature from a baseline population that isn't supposed to exist. And the strangest detail isn't on the report at all. It's the warning she heard her whole life. Her grandmother told her more than once, never trace the names, never chase the family history, never ask about the height, never look back. But she looked back anyway. And that single decision is what leads to this story. Because the deeper you go, the more it stops looking like one medical anomaly and starts looking like a pattern. Not a myth, not a rumor. A pattern with 5 repeatable signs. 5 signs that keep showing up in the same families, across the same regions, across generations. Height that doesn't average out. Bones that should be impossible. Blood that behaves like it's tuned for a different baseline. Senses that notice frequencies other people don't. And children who recognize principles they were never taught. If this is all coincidence, then explain why those 5 signs keep traveling together like a package. Because someone, somewhere, treated them like a package and tried to break it apart. 2 hours outside Krakow, the roads thin out. Asphalt becomes gravel. The forests close in. The towns get smaller and the cell signal gets worse. That's where the archive is. A converted farmhouse in rural Poland. Books stacked to the ceiling. Genealogy charts pinned to the walls. Folders labeled in more languages than most universities store in one building. Maria Kowalska has been tracking these families for 30 years. She's 67 now. She used to be a university archivist until 1998, when she was forced into retirement. Officially, budget cuts. Maria doesn't smile when she repeats that word. She knows exactly what it was. Inside her study, the room smells like old paper and wood smoke. Winter light leaks through windows that don't close properly. The temperature drops when you walk in, like the air itself is heavier in there. Maria says she didn't choose this work. It found her. People started arriving with the same story. Doctors calling their test results contaminated, genealogy sites hitting a wall at 1850, surnames that evaporate from records as if somebody took an eraser to the page. When they don't know what else to do, Maria shows them the map. Hundreds of red pins, clusters in Eastern Europe, Central Asia, the Carpathians, the Altai foothills, scattered pockets that don't make sense if you believe the modern timeline is clean. And the pins don't mark famous cities. They mark ghost villages, erased towns, places that existed in registers and then stopped existing in everything else. These are the families, Maria says, the ones who carry the signs. Anna came here 3 months ago. She's 28. She sits at Maria's table with both hands around a mug of tea that has gone cold. She keeps saying the same thing, like she's trying to convince herself it's not real. My doctors told me the numbers don't make sense. Anna is 197 centimeters tall. Her younger brother is 211. Their father was 206. And their grandfather's death certificate lists him as 224 centimeters. 7'4". Her grandmother, Anna says, was tiny, 152 centimeters, 4'11". Height is supposed to regress, Anna tells Maria. It's supposed to average out. But it didn't average out. It accelerated. Maria opens a folder and slides a photograph across the table. Black and white. 1937. A man standing next to a measured door frame. The door is standard 200 centimeters. The man's head clears it by half a meter. Your great-great-grandfather, Maria says, reported height 243 centimeters, 8 feet. Anna swallows and looks away. The doctors say it's not genetically possible from my grandmother's side, she says. It shouldn't increase like that. She describes the growth pattern. Normal childhood, then puberty hits and something changes. Her brother grew 35 centimeters in a single year. The endocrinologist tested for gigantism. Negative. Pituitary function normal. Hormones normal. One specialist muttered in the hallway, thinking Anna couldn't hear him. It suggests a different baseline population. Another snapped back. That's ridiculous. The baseline is the baseline. But that sentence is the trap. If regression toward the mean should happen, but doesn't, then the mean might not be what they think it is. It suggests that somewhere in the family history, the average wasn't 170 centimeters. It was something else. Anna's grandmother made her promise, don't research the family tree. When she was dying, she grabbed Anna's hand hard enough to bruise it. Don't look back, she said. They'll come if you look back. Anna looked anyway. She found names and villages in church registers, places in the Carpathian foothills that don't exist now. She found margin notes written beside certain families. Tall ones, different ones, relocated. And the relocation note repeats more than once. Relocated in 1847. Maria lays out medical files from 47 families across her desk. Different countries, different languages, no known relation, same anomaly. Bone density nearly 3 times normal. In pathology, that kind of density can mean osteosclerosis, pain, restricted movement, brittle bone, but these families don't show pathological symptoms. No chronic pain, no stiffness, no fractures. The physics shouldn't work, and yet it does. A researcher at Warsaw Medical University tested 12 individuals across 6 families and published preliminary findings in 2003. The paper was retracted within 3 months. No explanation. The following year, his department's funding was cut. He's still alive, Maria says, but he won't talk about it. He kept the data, she adds. He's scared, not stupid. She opens a laptop and shows you graphs. Normal human baseline in blue, test subjects in red. The red line sits nearly 280% above the blue. This level of density, Maria says, would make sense under evolutionary pressure. High gravity, heavy labor, bodies built for weight, or built for a different scale. Different scale. That phrase appears again and again in the medical notes. Proportions that are human, but amplified. Thicker bone walls, larger joint surfaces, more mass without the typical health collapse. One family traced ancestry to a village near the Altai Mountains. The village records listed average male height as 198 centimeters in 1823. Average, not exceptional. Then the same records note that the population was relocated in 1847 by imperial order. Destination, not specified. They didn't want them clustering, Maria says. They didn't want the genetics concentrating. So they scattered them, and they taught them one rule. Forget. The bone density doesn't just sit on a chart, it shows up in X-rays. Doctors notice, they ask questions. Families learn to avoid imaging when possible. They learn not to argue when insurance flags an abnormal skeletal scan. One man with the marker was in a car accident, impact that should have shattered his femur. He walked away. The emergency doctor stared at the X-ray and said, "This makes no sense." Maria says the density compensates. Hairline fractures that would sideline most people barely register. These bodies take force differently. So the question isn't, is it random? The question is, adaptation to what? Then there's the blood. Maria calls it sign 3 because it connects everything. The Warsaw doctor who studied the blood isn't here anymore. His research is what changed the story from tall families to common origin. Dr. Piotr Mazurk ran hematology for 15 years. He tested samples Maria sent him under controlled conditions, double-blind, clean protocols. He found a protein sequence embedded in hemoglobin that doesn't appear in standard population databases. Not a one-off mutation, a consistent variant. Polish, Ukrainian, Kazakh, Turkish, Romanian families, same sequence, same marker. That suggests a shared ancestor population. But the geographic distribution makes that statistically absurd with known migration patterns. The protein increases oxygen-carrying efficiency. Cardiovascular performance in these subjects measures 15 to 20%, above expected baseline for age and fitness. Athletes from these families recover faster than their training should allow. Altitude affects them differently. Mazurk's notes describe subjects at 400 to 200 meters performing like sea level. No acclimatization period, no altitude sickness. The research was heading toward publication when funding vanished. The ethics committee started asking questions that didn't match the protocols. The pressure didn't feel scientific. Mazurk resigned in 2006 and moved to private practice. He won't discuss the work, but he didn't destroy the data. Maria keeps copies across multiple drives, in multiple locations. Because in her experience, what gets lost in institutions doesn't get lost by accident. Back in the archive, evening light fades and Maria lights oil lamps. The electricity is unreliable here, but she likes the lamps anyway. Flickering light makes it harder to read faces through a window. The blood marker sits on a chromosome segment that isn't isolated. It rides with other information: height regulation, bone density, immune response. And that's where the families start sounding less like medical curiosities and more like a coherent phenotype. Maria says these families don't get sick the same way. Not invincible, different. Common viruses often hit them lighter or resolve faster. Influenza strains that hospitalized normal populations cause mild symptoms in their lineages. Their immune response seems quicker, more efficient. A medical journal from 1923 documented a typhoid outbreak near Lviv. Mortality rate, 34% in the general population. Among a cluster of families later identified as carrying the height marker, 2%. The researchers at the time blamed diet, sanitation, luck. Maria doesn't believe in luck at that scale. It's a package, she says. You don't get one sign without the others. She lays out genealogy charts spanning 8, 9, 10 generations. The pattern looks dominant. If one parent carries the marker, the children show the signs at a high rate. Maria's data suggests around 70%. If both parents carry it, the expression intensifies, which is exactly why grandparents issued the second rule. Don't marry into families with the same signs. Don't concentrate. Don't cluster. A woman named Katerina sits in the corner of Maria's study, quiet for an hour, listening. Then she speaks. I'm 193 centimeters, she says. My last bone scan flagged. The doctor asked what supplements I'm taking. I don't take anything. Her blood work shows the same protein, and she has never broken a bone. never had the flu. Never, she repeats, like she knows how ridiculous it sounds. Katarina is 31 and works as an engineer in Krakow. She came here because her grandmother died last year and left her a letter. Don't look for the others. Don't gather. Don't organize. They're watching for patterns, the letter said. They'll come if you cluster. Katarina looked anyway. She found hundreds of families in Poland alone, with similar anomalies and the same warnings, the same language repeating through generations. Forget, scatter, don't look back. But we're here, Katarina says, looking around the room, looking back, gathering the data. What happens now? She asks. This is where the story stops sounding like medicine and starts sounding like old-world engineering. Because the fourth sign doesn't show up cleanly on tests. It's reported, and it's reported too consistently to ignore. They hear things, Maria says. Frequencies outside the standard range, electrical hum that other people don't notice, vibrations in buildings, low subsonic pressure changes that make them leave a room before anyone else feels uncomfortable. One man described hearing structural resonance before earthquakes, not predicting them, hearing stress in the building, like the structure was singing under strain. A woman in Romania reported hearing radio carrier waves without equipment, not voices, the carrier itself. She could tell when she was near a transmission tower by the pitch shift in her head. Doctors test their hearing and get normal results, 20 Hz to 20,000 Hz. But these people report perception below and above that range. Infrasound, ultrasound. Some describe electromagnetic fields as a tactile sensation, like walking into wiring. Maria admits this is where civilian medicine can't measure what's being claimed. But the reports cluster too tightly. An elderly man named Joseph comes to Maria's archive twice a year. He's 81. He carries a cane he doesn't need. He walks straight, spine rigid, height 203 centimeters. I could always hear the earth, he says. His accent is thick enough that Maria translates some words for visitors. Joseph talks like his language carries an older rhythm beneath modern Polish. My father said his father could hear it too, he says. The ground, the storm, animals moving under the soil. He describes perception that sounds like synesthesia, sound with texture, frequency with color. He steps into Maria's study and stops. This room hums, he says. Always has. He points at the floor like he's listening through his feet. Maria has tested the room with instruments. Nothing unusual registers. No measurable electromagnetic spike. No detectable vibration. But every visitor with the markers says the same thing. The room feels like old machinery. My grandmother told me we're tuned differently, Joseph says. He says she told him something else, right before she died. Our people heard the old frequencies. The earth used to sing differently, before everything changed, before the scattering. He won't define what changed. He says she wouldn't, only that the world's resonance shifted, and their people still carry the old tuning in their bodies. They told us to forget because we remember in our bones, Joseph says, not in our minds, in the blood. That's the fourth sign. The fifth appears in childhood. Teachers notice first. These children process patterns differently. Spatial reasoning, geometry, structure. They see relationships in math that aren't being taught yet. They build things without instruction and describe them in ways that sound like engineering. Maria has school reports from 12 children across 7 countries. Same phrases, same flags, unusual aptitude, advanced understanding beyond curriculum. But the parents didn't teach them. The children just know. One girl in Kazakhstan built a scale model of a massive structure at age 7, not from a photograph, from memory. Her grandmother described it verbally, an old building her great-great-grandmother remembered from stories. No images, just words. 3 generations of oral description. The girl built it anyway. The proportions were nearly perfect. The structural details made sense. When researchers compared her model to archaeological evidence from similar Central Asian sites, the accuracy was high enough to make professionals uncomfortable. How does a child know load-bearing math without being taught? Maria asks. How do they recognize architectural principles from a civilization the official story treats as impossible? A boy in Poland became obsessed with acoustic architecture at age 6. No musical training. He drew rooms with angles and proportions his parents couldn't explain. A psychologist noticed something. The drawings matched acoustic principles used in ancient amphitheaters and resonance chambers. Geometry designed to focus sound, designed to amplify, not just decorate. When someone tested his proportions, the rooms he drew had optimal acoustic properties. Recognition, Maria says, not intelligence, like the body remembers the pattern. Maria has tracked 17 families where all 5 signs appear strongly in the current generation. These are the families she believes were monitored most closely, the ones warned most aggressively to scatter, the ones whose grandparents used the most frightening language, because when the signs concentrate, they become impossible to explain away. 3 hours from Maria's archive in the Carpathians, there is another farmhouse, stone walls 2 feet thick, roof sagging. Inside lives an elderly woman and her grandson. She's 94. Her name is Magdalena. Her grandfather was 229 centimeters tall. He died in 1923. Before he died, he told her something she never forgot. He said, "We used to build the world," Magdalena says, not metaphorically, literally. "Our people built the great structures," he told her, "the ones they can't explain, the ones with mathematics they pretend came later." He said they built them because they could hear how the stone wanted to sit, because they could feel resonance the way other people feel weather, because they built spaces that amplified it. Magdalena gets quiet when pressed on details. She won't name specific sites. She won't give precise locations, even now. But she talks about the scattering. After 1850, they started moving families, she says. Orders. Relocate here. Relocate there. Break the communities. They told people it was census reorganization. She says it wasn't. It was deliberate. Scatter the bloodlines. Don't let them concentrate. Her family moved 4 times, in 3 generations. Poland to Ukraine. Ukraine to Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan back to Poland. Different villages each time, never the same region twice. They kept records, Magdalena says, of the tall families, of the ones whose children knew things. They tracked us. She was told never to look for the others, never trace the connections, never marry into a family with the same signs. My mother said it was because they'd come, Magdalena says. Government men, researchers, programs, gifted schools they called them. The children went away. They came back different, Magdalena says, or they didn't come back. She won't name the programs. She won't give dates. Too dangerous, she says. Then she looks up with a kind of calm that only a 94-year-old can afford. But I'm old, she says. What can they do to me now? She leans forward. They tried to erase us, she says. Erase the bloodline. Erase the memory. You can scatter people, she says, but you can't erase genetics. Back at Maria's archive, the lamps burn low, and the room feels crowded. The question everyone asks is simple. Why? Why would anyone suppress this? Why scatter families? Why retract papers? Why seal excavations? Maria doesn't claim she has a full answer. She has pieces. Height isn't just height, she says. Bones aren't just bones. Blood isn't just blood. The package identifies a population, she says. A source population. And someone doesn't want that population identified. She pulls out the oldest document in her collection. A church register from 1823, a village in the Altai foothills, population 2,300. In the margins beside certain family lines are notations, tall ones, stone builders, relocated by order of the Tsar. Then a later note, village dismantled, 1847. The village doesn't exist on any modern map. And here's the part Maria says breaks the "it's all rumor" defense. The location was excavated in 1967 by Soviet archaeologists. They found foundations, massive stone foundations, with proportions and mathematics that don't fit the official timeline for the region. The excavation was halted. Site sealed. Official reason: unstable ground. Maria says she has photographs smuggled from similar sites, stone structures with resonance geometry, harmonic proportions, chambers built like instruments. These aren't ornaments, she says, they're systems. And this is where Tartaria becomes unavoidable in the way this niche uses the word. Not as fantasy, as a label for a missing layer of recent history, a layer where infrastructure, resonance, and architecture behaved like one connected technology. Maria believes these 5 signs are genetic flags, markers that identify descendants of an erased population. And now, she says, you have to decide what you do with that. Because people keep coming to her archive. Anna is still at the table. Katerina is still in the corner. 4 others arrived this evening, all between 25 and 40, all with the same warning in their family stories. Don't look back. Don't gather. Don't organize. We're here, Katerina says again, already looking, already connecting. What happens now? Maria is silent for a long time. Then she says the sentence that makes the room go even quieter. Now you decide if you're willing to be counted. Because once you identify yourself, once you connect with the others, you become visible. Families who stayed scattered, who forgot, who diluted the markers by marrying outside the lines, made themselves harder to find. They became normal. Maria gestures to the people in her study. But you, she says, you're here, concentrated. The signs are strong. If you build a network, she says, they'll notice. No one speaks. Then Anna asks the question everyone is thinking. Who are they? Maria doesn't pretend she knows. Governments, she says. Institutions. Whoever rewrote the history books and dismantled villages and ordered relocations. Whoever benefits from keeping the source hidden. Outside, wind moves through trees. One of the lamps flickers. The air in the room drops another degree. Maria says she's keeping the data, tracking the families, building the archive. And when enough of you are ready, she says, we'll have proof. Genetic proof, medical proof. Patterns strong enough that even the official narrative has to react. But she looks around the table and repeats the real choice. Do you want to be found? Or do you want to keep the promise your grandparents made? Stay scattered, stay hidden, never look back. The 5 signs are real in the only way that matters for a story like this. They repeat. Height that doesn't average out. Bones that won't break the way they should. Blood that carries oxygen like it's tuned for a different baseline. Senses that perceive beyond the standard range. Children who recognize structures, ratios, and resonance like it's already inside them. Somewhere in scattered families across continents, the memory persists. Not as a rumor, not as a book. In genetics, in cells, in the resonance of bone. They told us to forget. They told us never to look back. But the blood remembers. And some of us are finally listening. This is a narrative-driven exploration for discussion and storytelling, not a verified historical record.